I'm representing the League of Women Voters.
And Dennis Herter, representing the Sonoma County Alliance.
Musa Bessie, representing the Santa Rosa Little Chamber.
I'm Rob Strickland with the City of Santa Rosa.
Okay.
I'm Shauna Gause with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Drew Nichols at CTA.
James Cameron with the Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Dana Trey with Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
David Ripper with Sonoma County Transportation Authority.
Ross Clendon, Sonoma County Transportation Authority and Regional Climate Protection Authority.
Mark Hale, representing BIA.
Tom Banning, 3rd District.
Natalie Higley with the North Bay Labor Council.
Dave McKenzie, I think I'm representing the transportation and land use group. That's my recollection.
You got it. Steve Bertlebaugh representing the Sierra Club.
Wonderful, thank you guys. Mark, does you serve down in the Bay Area with Bob Glover down there?
We finally got Bob to write the email so I can replace Kurt. Basically.
Oh, okay. Anyways, thank you.
We got it. We finally got it.
Nice to meet you, Ron. So, thank you. Do we have any public comment? I know we're on a hybrid meeting for those board members. I believe I'll say this right. Drew, correct me if I'm wrong. For those board members that can't attend live, they are members of the public and they can have public comment. But, you know, with our highfalutin voting, you won't be able to cast your vote. But anyways, I see a couple, at least one there. Any public comment from the public? Nope. Okay. So anybody else with any public comment? Seeing none, we'll go to administrative items. And we have had a meeting February 27th via Zoom. And if anybody would like to make a motion to accept those minutes as written.
Also move.
Second, any discussion or corrections to the minutes? And seeing none.
Should we know if there are any members of the CAC who are online?
There's just the
Jeff
one.
Blakely is online.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead. Can he introduce himself, Drew? Is he live? Okay.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Blakely. I'm just watching in on the meeting. I'm representing Save Our Sonoma County Roads.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Nobody else is on the hybrid meeting, I assume. That's on the CAC committee. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Good point, Steve. Thank you. Anyways, we have a motion and a second in front of us. Is there any opposition to accepting the minutes as written?
I was not at the meeting, but I think I sent a note, to do, so am I excused or not with an asterisk? So.
I didn't understand.
You can abstain.
You abstain.
Oh, you weren't there, so just abstain. So we'll do the voting. All those in favor of the minutes as
but my question in the minutes.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, whether you were shown as
you know if
That is on me. I'm sorry. When I was doing the roster,
and the roster, like
we'll make that correction.
okay, thank you. So we have one correction noted. Will the motioner and the second accept that correction? And the motion and second is still in place?
Sure.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Joe.
All those in favor of the corrected minutes, raise your hand or signal aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Nay? And any abstentions?
I'll abstain. I was not there.
One abstention, two abstentions. All right. Thank you, guys.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, since parliamentary matters come up from time to time, I had this question raised at the CDC Advisory Committee as to whether someone who was not present at a meeting could still vote in favor of the minutes. And county council will tell you that they can.
They can?
They can. I just wanted to introduce that topic.
Interesting.
For the hell of it.
Okay. I guess we should have started out because we've had trouble with a quorum. Do we have a quorum today, first of all?
We do.
Okay. And the quorum has just been added to.
Sorry, everybody. It took longer to print this 3D avatar. Zoom than expected.
Just so everybody knows, the two gentlemen that came in a little bit later, would you introduce yourself, please, sir?
Mark Soyland representing Supervisor Rabbit's second district.
All right.
And Tom Conlon, representing the Sonoma County Conservation Coalition from Sonoma.
Okay, thank you. All you guys, well, you saw it, we just voted on the minutes. And we are on to the Measure M presentation. Shana?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we do each month, bring you a presentation from a project sponsor, and this month's project sponsor is the City of Santa Rosa, and they are going to present. Rob Sprinkle is here, and he's going to present on several of the projects, so I'll just let him jump right in.
Great, thanks, Shauna, and thanks. It's great to be here today. My apologies. As I mentioned, I'm going to report out on our Measure M for the City of Santa Rosa today. My name is Rob Sprinkle. I'm the Deputy Director of Traffic Engineering and filling in as the Deputy Director for our Capital Projects team. And filling in for Nancy Adams, who's also not here to help present this. So we'll leave it on me. If I don't have a question, answer for a question you'll have, I could send it to Shauna. I'll follow up, and then she can maybe send it around.
You want to wait until the end to field questions, or do you want people to just raise their hand? And
that would be great if we could wait till the end.
Wait till the end.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
So I'm going to go through our 4 projects that we have right now for Measure M: Fulton Road, Farms Lane Extension, Santa Rosa Creek Trail, Santa Rosa Avenue bike lanes. So the first project I'm going to go over is the Fulton Road Improvement Phase 1. So Phase 1 is the section, widen the section from Gurnville Road up to Wood Road. And if anyone's been over that area, you know that the section from Piner to Wood Road has already been widened to a 4-lane facility with a left turn lane. The section between Piner and Gurnville Road has not been improved and is lacking sidewalks, bike lanes, and 4 lanes the entire section. So the project that we're on right now that's under construction and within the Measure M purview is to widen that section to 4 lanes with a median and turn pockets. Phase 2 of the project is also shown on this screen, and that's the Fulton interchange section, and that is, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So this is just a quick view of what we're looking to improve on Fulton Road. It shows some of the LID features in the planter strips, the sidewalks, the bike lanes, and the roadway configuration. It's kind of our typical 5-lane parkway type boulevard street.
Okay, question on that?
Yes.
You can go back to that one for a second. Yeah, just a couple of comments on it or questions. One is there any way that the bike lanes can end up being protected? And the second one is, we keep putting bike lanes over in where the water goes. And so it's not that easy to bike over there. And people who have 3-wheel bikes, for instance, they can't use them on those roadways at all because they keep going into the curb. Is there any thought on how to do something different in the future, since we're trying to get personal mobility?
Yes, great question. So with this alignment, we actually did increase our bike lanes from a 5-lane to a 5 foot to a 6-foot bike lane to make them a little bit wider. Doing a protected bike lane here, if we had more right of way, we could have done that. And what we're finding now, that with the protected bike lanes, that we don't have a way to clean them yet. So even if we did install them, we can't sweep them with the sweeper. We have to get a smaller sweeper to be able to do that. So we are looking at actually doing that in the future and getting a smaller sweeper so we can actually sweep the bike lane, because that's another comment we get a lot is you need to sweep the bike lanes where they're full of debris. And one of the other reasons that they're full of debris is that the roads are falling apart. So the new construction here, the bike lane should be in a much better facility.
Through the chair.
Yeah,
Direct follow-up on that.
we just want to remind everybody, out of respect for the speaker, we're going to try to hold the questions to the end. Go ahead and ask your question.
Actually, we can just hold it per project. Maybe that would be a better way to do. Hold it per project.
Okay.
Because I still have a question about the gutter.
Okay.
Tom, did you have a follow-up?
Just a definition of understanding why that sweeper is not wide enough. It seems like you're sweeping a wider lane. Why can't you sweep a narrower lane? It makes sense.
So a protected bike lane isn't necessarily much wider than the 6 feet, but it has a physical barrier. to keep it as a protection. So we don't have a 6 foot wide sweeper. The sweepers are typically about 9.5 feet wide with the brushes out.
Cool.
So we have to have a wider.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. So this is a couple of photos of our construction project underway. So this is the one on the left is looking southbound towards the Pioneer High School signal. Looking at the subgrade, getting ready for paving, which they were going to start today and was pushed off because of the weather. And then looking north from that same location at some of the subgrade, they still have some work to do on that. Looks like I just wanted to throw in some construction photos for you. So here's actually, this is a pretty exciting project because this is the first project in Santa Rosa that we're using roller compacted concrete. So this is some photos of our test bed that we laid the roller compacted concrete in. It's actually put into a paver, and then a roller is put onto it before they finish it, and then they go through and they saw cut it. And the moisture content has to be very precise on this because when they first came out with the first couple loads, it was actually too wet to put the roller on, and the roller started to sink. So it's very there's a very delicate sweet spot where you can get the roller on it and compact it versus where there's too much water or not enough to get it hydrated enough.
Rob, does the roller ride on the concrete, or do you have screeds set up that it rides on the rails?
It rides on the concrete.
On the concrete itself.
It's a roller compacted concrete. Some of the other benefits to this is that the the thickness section that you get to get the same traffic index, which is loading for trucks and buses and those types of equipment. You could use a much smaller section. So we're using an 8-inch section, whereas if we use just asphalt, it would be about 1.5 feet to get the same level of strength basically and life for the buses and the trucks. And actually the concrete has a much higher life, about 40 years versus 20 to 25 years for the asphalt. So we're also looking to save a lot in trucking. You're not taking as much out. We're not bringing as much material in, so it's better for the environment in that sense. So we're really looking forward to seeing the results of the performance of this roller compacted concrete on this segment of roadway. Getting to some of the financials. So phase 1 has an $8.7 million program amount, which we intend to use all of. And the project will be completed in 2024. And then moving on to phase 2. Phase 2 of the project, as I mentioned before, is the Fulton Road interchange. And that section of the roadway, we're actually, SCTA is working with us, and they put out an RFP for a concept designs for the Fulton Road interchange. So we start to get some ideas of how we could implement that in the future as well. So just going through some of the other times for this phase 1, just kind of shooting down to the construction section because that's where we're at right now. We're, like I mentioned, we're looking to finish construction. We started in June of 22, and we're looking to finish by the end of 24.
Excuse me, it's the Fulton Road and what?
Fulton Road between Burnville and Pioneer.
In the interchange.
Oh, Highway 12. I'm sorry, Highway 12. So Fulton Road, phase 1, looking at just some of the other financials, and thanks, Drew, for changing the slide for me. We did get some reimbursements on the construction this year. $2.9 million has been reimbursed so far, and we are contributing about $13 million so far to this project.
This is in addition to Measure M, or?
This is that's the Measure M component of it. So the total Measure M component program is $8.7 million. So we've reimbursed a total of over $3 million, $3.5 million. Oh, 4.5 million, excuse me.
So questions at the end?
Yeah, I've got 3. I was just waiting.
I've got
to
3.
fit it in.
I think this is the last slide of.
Okay. Yeah, it is. I'll get you after the last one. Go ahead.
I think this is the last.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So back to the one, and just wanted to know that when we do the bike lanes, that 3-wheel bikes won't have a problem with the turning into the gutters. That has to do with how fast the slope is there. And this is a bizarre question. I know we've been building bermed roads now for probably 90 years. Have we ever looked at taking the water to the center instead?
I can't think of any locations in Santa Rosa where we've done that.
Yeah. That was when I saw your cross section. Yeah. It occurred to me for the first time why we've been doing this like this forever. But I'll ask questions like that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of the storm drain infrastructure, if that may have something to do with it. Or,
You would think you'd want to have one storm drain, wouldn't you?
right. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not thinking that's it exactly.
Yeah, okay. So the second question is this, did you look at low carbon concrete as part of the project as well?
I'm not familiar with low carbon.
Okay, there's a number, well, if we start looking for low carbon concrete, there's a number of manufacturers now in the area that are focusing on it. And they have stronger concrete. When you talk about the thinner sections, a part of it is the low carbon concrete now, in some of the methods that are used, you can even use thinner sections because the strength is higher. It may not work the same way with the compression that you're doing. And the last one that's not for you is for Drew. You gave us abbreviations. There's 4 abbreviations up here, and I had to go look all of them up because I'm a novice. And I finally figured out what they meant, and they're not on your list.
So environmental plan specs and engineering right away and construction. Yeah, sorry. Okay.
So Rob, I understand that the extended life of the roller compacted concrete is the big advantage. I guess my quick question is 40 years versus 20 for AC?
Yeah.
So it's roughly
and maybe even a little bit longer than that.
So it's at least twice the lifespan.
Yes.
And then the other question is that the cost savings, when you figure it's twice the lifespan, must be dramatic. Otherwise, the problem with having to replace utilities under roller compacted concrete would raise its head and kind of wipe away the promise of the extended life, because it's harder to dig a section of trunk sewer up and replace it under roller compacted concrete. How do you do those repairs? Or
so
yeah,
it's so we debate this with our utility folks because you do have to saw cut it. Okay, but you have to saw cut asphalt as well. Yeah. You're saw cutting 8 inches instead of 1.5 feet of asphalt. So it's actually a little easier to get through, and then you can dial in your repair. The repairs do take a little longer to set up. It's not you roll it and then you're kind of off of it and you're done. So that does take time to set up. So there's a little bit longer traffic control involved with it. But you can play it. So there's things that you can do to help mitigate those issues.
If you were doing AC or roller compacted concrete, would you work with utilities and try to get all the utilities replaced? Yes. Before you did the total street section? And
the reason we were only doing certain locations and looking at specific locations for this application where the utility age is in a kind of a sweet spot for us, that we know we're not going to touch it for at least probably 40 years. And we know that has a long life left. They'll go through, they'll change the saddles out. They'll do some maintenance work that they want to do ahead of time so that we're not getting into the street or avoiding getting to the street if at all possible.
And question for us on the Go-Sonoma Act is, are utilities covered in any way, shape, or form for these total street sections? Or because of what we just were bringing up, you have to replace the utilities before you do the total street section. So are we given any ability for municipalities to be able to do that with Measure DD?
In the Measure M strategic plan that talks about eligible expenses. And I believe that if it is directly related to the roadway implementation, then it is considered eligible. But if you're doing a Rule 20 or something, then I'm going to say no.
Thank you.
Okay. Will we end up with conduits in any case, even if we haven't figured out? I don't know whether there's wire strung from pole to pole through that neighborhood, or whether there's undergrounded for the electric.
We actually did Rule 20 through here. It's all underground as part of this.
Great. Thank you. Oh, one more.
Great. What will be the speed limit?
The speed limit will be its current speed limit, which is 45 and 25 at the school.
At Pioneer High.
Yes.
Okay. And are there any new crosswalks on this section?
There are
not there prior to this redesign?
Yes, there are. We're putting in a hawk or a hybrid signal at the youth community park and the school. So between Jens, which is a new signal in the subdivision to the south, and the Pioneer High School traffic signal.
And is that what do you call it? Island in the middle?
Yes.
Offset. Whatever
It's
that
not
style
offset.
is called.
It's not offset, but there is an island in the middle.
Okay. Bike lanes, are they painted green at intersections or mid-block also since it's a fairly high velocity, high speed road?
So typically our preference for green paint is we paint it or use thermoplastic actually, where there's a mixing zone between the bikes and the vehicles.
Right.
So we do that because we can't afford to basically paint everything green. We just don't have the funding to do it and to maintain it. So we pick the mixing zones, or where there's transition zones, and those are the locations that we paint green.
And lastly, does Santa Rosa City Engineering Group have any kind of thoughts on up to what speed limit they allow having a unprotected bike lane? I mean, speaking as someone who's had high velocity cars blast by a few feet away, I know there's a 3-foot law, but there's nothing between you and the 50-mile-per-hour car. Do you have, getting back to your question on, is there a future with protected bike lanes once you have your sweeper, and would you prioritize based on speed limits? I mean, is there any thinking like that going on among the engineers?
We're doing a lot of thinking about that. We've actually recently hired an active transportation planner who also is helping us do a lot of those, go through a lot of those thought processes that we hadn't in the past. This project is a little bit left over from the environmental process that was done prior to a lot of this thinking. I mean, how long these projects take to go to get the environmental process done and then finally get to construction and get the funding. So this is one of the last projects that we have that is still on that same kind of cross section, right? And now we're looking at whenever we do any of our re-slurry projects, we're putting in buffer bike lanes, or we're putting in
No, it's me. I was trying to get back to the schedule so you can see that this started in
15. So we're 9 years, almost 8 years into it, and it's probably a little before that we actually started. So sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Bike lanes.
So we're doing a lot more of buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes, seeing if the protected bike lanes will fit on. We have a project on Dutton Avenue that we're looking to do another road diet, and on that we're moving the parking away from the curb to have the protected bike lane against the curb. So we are moving in those different directions to try to get more protected bike lanes in Santa Rosa.
That's good, because I fear these brand new bike lanes, excuse me, will appeal to the experienced cyclist. And I can't imagine a parent letting their children out on a 45-mile-per-hour road. They'd be on the sidewalk,
right,
which is kind of a failure design-wise until they can be made safer.
Yeah, and I mean, the entire segment of Fulton Road is very similar to this segment as well. So it's not something that even if we had the section protected, it'd be a very isolated section. Although that's how we start implementations, is we start with little bits and pieces and grow. So
okay. Wait, did you? Oh, I'm sorry.
Back to your.
I was going to ask you if you would speak up to it. Yeah, I thought you would know.
Question. Draining into the median you'll see it on Caltrans jobs sometimes, but not so much on city streets because of the turn pockets. Because you still need to deal with that water in the turn pockets, and then plus if anything ever fails, it's filling up in the middle versus on the outside edges. You can go down there. There's outside on the other streets to connect to it. So it can be done, but you need kind of special circumstances.
I'm glad there's a reason for it.
Thanks, Mark.
Every once in a while.
Hey, look at I ask those questions because often the reason for something was really important about 75 or 80 years ago.
Yeah, that's when we had to jump the
That's a fair question. Did you guys consider asphalt wearing surface at all for
an asphalt wearing surface?
Yeah, you see,
I think Caltrans
does a lot.
Yeah, like an inch kind of surface or less than that.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if it was
on top of the concrete
evaluated. Yeah.
Oh no. Okay. So our plan is to do the roller compacted concrete, do the finish, saw cut it, and then come back when the project's done and diamond grind it to make sure that the ride quality is smooth along the entire thing. And that's kind of one of the maintenance things that you do is every so many years you come back and then you re-diamond grind it to make sure you're not getting undulations and stuff.
I know phase one is really nice to.
It's about
drive on
it
in.
could be.
Yeah, it's about ready to.
Yeah, I think so.
Eliminates heat islands.
It's starting to hop a little.
Yeah, a little bit.
I felt that this
Yeah,
weekend.
a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
One last on this
We
project.
are gonna get to the second project.
Okay.
Tom and Rosa, I think.
Thank you. Just one last on this project. So it sounds like this is new for you guys, this saw cut concrete. Is this the only project in the city? Is this becoming kind of, this is a pilot? Is it going to become standard? Is it happening anywhere else in the county that you're aware of?
It is a pilot. We are looking at it on another job. I'm not sure if the county is looking at it, but I know the county's interested in seeing how it works here.
Rosa?
The Fulton interchange, my assumption it is a Caltrans interchange. Is it?
It's actually, we have measure and planning to build it. It was in our measure and program. So I mean, it is, yes, it is a
It's on
Caltrans
Caltrans
intersection.
right
It's the
away.
right
But
way.
is it fully funded?
No. No,
Similar to Hearn, that's
Mm.
Caltrans too, but we're doing it.
Just $500,000 we have.
Yeah.
for the feasibility studies. Yes.
And the feasibility study will be like, who does it, Caltrans?
No, we're doing it.
Going out to
SCTA,
RFP.
SCTA has released an RFP or is releasing an RFP, and one of the things we'll be looking at is, should it be a traditional interchange? Should it have, we're asking the question, well, how should this look? How can we make it function better? But it doesn't necessarily have to be a true, freeway interchange, because it's not a freeway interchange right now, because it's not freeway.
So what I may suggest, if you would consider a roundabout in that area.
Part of
as
the
one of the alternatives, because I did not do the study, but from my little experience, that location is a good location, from the traffic, volumes, the space.
Where is this that you're talking about?
Fulton and Highway. Interchange.
In fact, that would be great for the transition speeds, because the speed changes right there as well.
Okay. Rob, you got 2 minutes for each of your other projects.
Perfect.
No.
That's all I need. It's a farmer's land extension. Nothing new here. We have not done any work on this in the last year. The measure of funding is the same as it was in the past. It's project, what's that?
Well, we just adjusted the funding, so.
True, but we have not spent any more money on it. Sorry.
One question on that.
Yeah.
On that map, the route goes through the parking lot.
Yeah.
By the water tanks, that's
Yeah.
part of Taylor Mountain Regional
Correct.
Park. Has it always been?
Yes.
In that alignment?
Yes,
Okay, so regional parks is
they know.
copacetic about that? All right.
They know.
Well, they know about
They
it.
know. They do.
I have a question, I see.
Go ahead.
I saw the same thing, and I had seen an earlier narrative, and I was trying to figure out what this project was. Now I finally understand it. Was there any consideration at looking at this project and using Quanah Springs Road instead of going through the park, reducing the cost on it and just improving that road?
That's an option actually that we've discussed internally is, just go to Quanah Springs as a phase of the project.
You won't have to go uphill then too.
Not as the entire project, but as a phase.
Yeah. Okay.
So looking at the timeline real quick, the environmental was done back in, finished in 2007. And we did get plans and specs done to about a 90–95% range. Those would have to be revisited again once, if this project picked back up again, both the environmental and the plans, just that things have changed over the last 10 years that need to be updated, similar to the bike lanes and all those things. I mean, we do an off street path there. We do a class 1 adjacent to the structure, or adjacent to it instead of an on street.
For the entire.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yes. So we are taking those types of things into consideration for sure. And that would have to be redesigned with this project. So we still do have one remaining parcel that needs to be acquired here.
Rob, you got time for a question?
You bet.
Yeah, Petaluma Hill Road, where the new apartments are being built, at the south end of that project. That's where Farmers Lane Extension meets Petaluma Hill Road, right?
Yes.
And so there is some construction going on there.
Yes.
And is it sort of reached its point of conclusion for the moment with, it has the various protection against sediment movement and that sort of thing, but it's draw, but is it just going to sit there like that now until funding is available?
I hope not. No, they're constructing the intersection of the Lupa and Petaluma Hill Road. They will be constructing that intersection, and they're constructing to the east up to Franz Kafka, which is the first intersection. So there will be a segment of the roadway constructed of Farmers Lane Extension.
All of us who use that road frequently are wondering what our future is going to be like once the apartments are all occupied.
Yeah, so there's several different apartment complexes there.
Yeah. There are.
Wilson?
Oh, is there any other Farmers Lane Extension?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shauna, you mentioned, you adjusted, the funding, so what are the numbers? And this table, the money we spent so far?
Yeah. About $11 million is what we spent.
So my question.
No. Oh.
The total money.
Yeah.
But the construction, what are we talking about?
So the last estimate.
And how much funding is available? And, is there a serious look at building that extension?
So the last estimate I had, it was over $40 million to construct the entire roadway segment.
Well,
we don't have any money for it.
Nothing at all.
That'll slow it down.
No.
Even with the impact fees,
I mean, we have nothing dedicated to that currently. So our focuses right now are our first focus was to get the Hearn interchange funded, and that's been funded, and that's moving forward. Our second main project is our bike ped overcrossing, get that funded. That is not currently funded 100%. So I won't say extra money, but any money that isn't programmed to a essential need goes to those projects right now. So this has been a project that has not been elevated to that need by the council at this point.
But my understanding, it was elevated, as a fire, fire evacuation job.
It absolutely would help in a fire evacuation. I'm arguing with you.
I'm not arguing, my understanding, the city council elevated, that as a priority.
I would say there's been mixed feelings about the construction of Farmers Lane Extension by various city council members. No, leave it there.
Very diplomatic.
I'm trying.
All right.
Moving on. 2 down, 2 to go. So Santa Rosa Creek Trail. So we have 3 projects that are identified under this Measure M project. One is Streamside, which is shown in the bottom right corner. It filled the gap between a section of trail just south of Quig and north of the Streamside subdivision there off of Highway 12. It's the red section that was done back in 2015, I think. I'll see if I'm right in a minute. And then the other section that was done on the east side of Dutton Avenue, you can see it in the red circle on the slide. It was phase 2, and phase 3 is the backwards L-shaped piece that will go on the west side of Dutton Avenue.
That's where people are climbing up and down today.
Yes, correct. So just a little bit on the funding here. Plus 14 was Streamside was completed in 14. Phase 2 was in 12 for that east side, and we are looking at the end of 2024 to complete the west side. And I did just see the 60% drawings on those today, so that's pretty exciting. That project is moving along.
Rob, just for the street crossings for that trail, when you cross across the traveled way, is it just a crosswalk?
So currently there is nothing there now. So the crossing will actually be, and that's why we're actually, one of the reasons why we're putting this access on the other side of the roadway is so you don't have to cross the street, you could use underneath. So you
Gotcha.
can continue
Oh, okay.
on the path, and from the path, you can access
Keep them away
either-
from the
either
vehicles
side.
altogether. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So funding wise, we have, if we go through some of the math, there was $633,000 program for this. We have $162,000 program now. So we have $471,000 still needing to be appropriated for this project. And that will help with the construction phase once we get that done. So it's not listed here because it's not programmed yet.
And it's that expensive to do retaining walls and so forth?
I didn't look at the estimate today, but it was in my email. I didn't take a look at it yet, but so that would make it about $1 million project. And I would think that would be pretty close to that.
Just one question back on the Dutton
Yes.
part. Is it possible if we don't have the funds to do something more modest? The way those ramps work, you can take a bike and whatever else up and down. Is there a stair or something they put in the more modest to start with, as an interim as we're waiting for funds?
So we need to make it ADA accessible.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
ADA accessible, we have to do 5%.
It has to be, okay. All right.
So I think that we're putting in a 4.8% slope along that entire.
Right.
Any questions on that? Okay, Santa Rosa Avenue bike lane. So this is the last segment of the old Redwood Highway, Mendocino Avenue, and Santa Rosa Avenue bike lane segment. So back when these projects started, the time period when the old Redwood Highway one was done, but it was a ways back. 08? Okay, it was a ways back. And this is this and the segment just to the north of this to First Street are the last segments of Santa Rosa Avenue that do not have bike lanes. I'll briefly touch on the segment just to the north between First and Sonoma. We are going to be putting in actually a cycle track or a protected class 4 that will be on the west side adjacent to the Prince Memorial Greenway. So then you can come off the Prince Memorial Greenway and then get onto the cycle track and go up to First Street and make your crossing there, or go south to Sonoma and make your crossings there. On this segment.
And is that part of this project?
No, that's a separate project that we have CFCA funds for. So we're going to be doing that, hopefully in conjunction with this project, kind of at the same time. So it might seem like the same project, but it's not the same funding or contract. So here's just a quick plan view of part of the improvements that we're going to be done here. So we are doing bulb outs for pedestrian crossings as well as the Z crossings. You could see that in the center of the slide, where you cross to the median, then you turn, face traffic again, cross, and then cross again. We will be putting in rapid regenerative flashing beacons at these locations as well. And I mentioned the bulb outs. We're also putting in the buffer bike lanes along this segment of roadway, retaining the parking, and I think we're putting in, it's not shown on this slide, but I think we're putting in some features for the bus stop too, a little bit about for the bus stops as well in the segment.
What is the bike lane?
So the bike lane is you can see the dashed with a solid line. I don't think the same points, does it?
That's protected on both sides of the road.
So there's the bike. Yeah, thanks, Drew. There's the bike lane there.
And the parking is.
And the parking is adjacent to the curb in this location. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Have we ever considered doing what New York's doing, what they do in Europe, where the parking actually is protection?
Yes, we are considering that. I mentioned that we're considering that for Dutton when we do that project. But again, we did have room there. We can get 9 feet, so we can get the sweepers in there. This location, we still don't have that room. We don't have enough room to get the sweepers in. So it is kind of a limiting factor. And we're looking for options where we can do it. We are doing that. So this is just a quick slide on the time frame. This is the kind of schedule I like to see when the environmental is very close to actual construction dates. So this is what we like to do, is get a project and get it out, get it done. Looking to award this project in 2 weeks on April 11th at our city council. It's been out to bid, and we have I think Granite Construction is our pending awardee. And we are working with SCTA to get some funding aligned. The last bit of funding for this of Measure M funding, which I think is next, yes, the $343,000. So originally with this project, Old Redwood Highway and the Santa Rosa Avenue bike lanes to the south of Mendocino, we had spent $157,000 out of the $500,000 in this program. So there was still the remaining balance of $343 left, and we are treating that, or we are putting that towards this project, and that will be going to your board on the 10th. Oh, are there any other questions on this one?
Yes.
Go ahead, Todd.
Same question as before. What should be the speed limit here?
So the speed limit here, so speed limits, I'm just going to put on my traffic engineering hat for a minute. So speed limits are not arbitrary. So if anyone knows how they're set by doing radar surveys of the traffic, getting that radar survey, doing looking at the 85th percentile, which is 85% of the traffic is going at that speed or less. So 15% of that traffic is going faster than that speed. So that's a benchmark that we use to set speed.
And isn't that changing with the state?
In
the coming years?
Yeah, AB 43 just passed, and they actually just gave guidance in the NVTCD. I don't know if that's on your list, the manual uniform traffic control devices. They just gave guidance on how traffic engineers are not supposed to implement that rule. So we are actually going to be going to council in May to reduce speed limits in our downtown area. Several of those will go from 25 to 20, and then from 30 to 25. So we're looking to reduce a lot of those by 5 miles an hour, which we will be able to do at that point.
Okay.
After new construction, a lot of times we are able to, and especially when we're reducing the number of travel lanes, we're able to reduce the speed because people tend to go slower on those streets. So once something's constructed, the lane configurations are changed, we go out and we do another radar speed survey and see if we can certify it at a lower speed than it was prior. So this section of roadway is, I believe, 35 at this point, and we'll try to get it to the 30 once it's.
Okay, that leads my next question. South and north, I believe north of here, it's 2 lanes each direction, and here's a 1 lane each direction.
Yes.
Segment, and then again to the south, it's back up to 2. Anything you can tell us about those transitions?
So the transition will occur between Maple and Pine Street to the north. There's a dual left on Sonoma that turns into the southbound direction. They will merge shortly after that turn. From the south, we're actually removing one of them from between First Street and Sonoma. The southbound direction, we're actually removing a lane to put in the cycle track.
That protected bike lane on the west side only.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
On the north side, I think we have the bike lane there, and if we don't, we'll look to see if we can. No, we do have a bike lane there. We do. So that section would continue to be 2 lanes north of there till you get to 3rd Street.
And will Sonoma to Courthouse Square that's a future, is that whole segment a future project like this, or?
Not currently.
Okay. And wasn't this segment or all along Santa Rosa Avenue, that was part of a city specific plan at one point in time? I vaguely remember that.
There was a plan, not a specific plan, but there was a plan specific to this corridor. There was a corridor study that was done.
Okay.
Yes, and this is a result of that.
Okay.
Okay, and Steve had a question.
So the Air Resources Board is talking about a 25% reduction in vehicle miles traveled by 2030. How does that influence the overall picture about what you prioritize and how you're looking at demand for street improvements?
Well, we do have a large focus right now on bike and ped improvements. So this is an example of one.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, I mean, we are changing our focus currently to address a lot of the need for kind of addressing all mobility options. The bike ped overcrossing, the Hearn overcrossing, all those have components of bike and ped that didn't really before. So we are very much focused on addressing those issues.
Okay, I'm just wondering if it's part of the big picture or whether it's being project by project.
Well, it's definitely a part of the big picture. I mean, that's one of our big focuses in traffic engineering is to look at those and to make pedestrian crossings safer and to, I mean, all those things are part of what we do.
All right. Good.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
You did.
Okay.
Great answering all those questions. I'm really enjoying this. No, it's great, great level of conversation. The other objective here we have at SCTA, CAC is safety. And I think there's a high injury network analysis that's been done in Vision Zero plan. And so I'm curious, any of these projects are considered injury network corridors, and if there's any effect on that designation on your transportation plan.
So these projects were all conceived prior to that coming to fruition, although, but I would think that our Santa Rosa Avenue corridor is likely one that I'm not sure if it's on the highway training network or not, but yeah, we are adding all the bike and ped facilities and putting in the Z crossings. I mean, that's we love to do those kind of projects, really. I mean, those are ones that we really like to implement for the community. What's your other question? Sorry.
That was really
that was it. Okay. Yeah.
Question. I mean, the other question I've got is it goes back to that concrete versus asphalt, that pilot you're doing. And we probably should get you some information on low carbon concrete. And I'm curious about kind of life cycle pros and cons, as well as cost, life cycle cost, as John mentioned, that it might be longer lasting, but concrete's very high carbon initially as well. But if you don't have to replace it, it might pay itself back.
So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of variables I think there, because it's not just the material itself, but it's then you think of all the trucking and all the excavation work and all the removal, and then the bringing back, the asphalt potentially, and you're at least probably doubling the amount of trucking that you're doing for both the removal and the replacement. So how does that carbon? Yeah. How does that fit into it? And does that offset the concrete being the higher carbon content or whatever? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it's a pretty complicated question that if you'd have to, there's a lot of factors to it.
Great answers. I just got a comment here, and that is that if anybody else feels the same way I do, that we're in damn good hands with Rob Sprinkle. You are a freaking rock star. You kidding me? This is a tough group. And you're like batting them back. What else you got?
You're trying.
Anyway, good stuff, Rob.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Do you want to acknowledge in case there's any public comment on the video?
Yeah, Jeff.
Hands up, but
you still there, Jeff?
I lost.
You could take the presentation down.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Any questions?
I only had one question about Rob back in the first phase of the Fulton project. And I'm talking about the phase that went from the Highway 12 to Hall Road on Fulton Road. I believe that was that initially scheduled for rolled concrete and then was a standard poured concrete? And is that going to hold up?
So yeah, concrete, either way, it has the same life cycle. It's basically, it's how it's placed. I think we had some issues with the test pad with the roller compacted concrete, and we didn't have the same level of confidence we have now with the contractor and their subs. We have much more higher confidence that with this product now than we did last round, I'll say. We have a great mix design. Everything's meeting its strengths. And I think we're gonna have a really successful project. And that was poured in standard Portland cement concrete at a wetter mix. How you would, pour your driveway basically or anything.
So, yeah, so do you expect that the rolled product will go down flatter and not require an initial grinding?
No, we still suspect that it will require some grinding. You know, when they bring out the grinders, my understanding is, I haven't seen it done, but you can only get so flat with the paver and the rollers, and you really do need to have the grinder come out to take out those small bumps. And if you don't, they kind of start to progress into the larger bumps over time, right? So the smoother surface you have, it's kind of more of a guarantee just to keep it smooth, because you don't get the trucks, you know.
Right. Well, it's looking great, and we're glad to see it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Great job, Rob. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I also think Zeno put his hand up as well. Yeah.
Was that
Zeno, another member of the public.
Oh, I can't see that. Oh, okay. Who is that, Drew? Zeno, you got a question?
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on the speed limit issue a bit more. So the law changed 22, and it's optional for local government to act on it. So my question is, what is the process? Is this, does it need funding to reduce speed limits? And how long would it about take? And the last aspect is a project that is already in development. Can it incorporate the new insights about the importance of reducing speed limits?
So I should have wrote those questions down. So it was approved in 22, and they approved only in the CBD, central business districts, to be able to reduce them with speed limits. They have four criteria, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I believe it was the density of a business. I can't remember all. But there are four criteria you had to meet to be able to do it prior to this other rulings and direction they just gave last month on how you can do this implementation of lowering the speed limits. So we are looking to do that on the streets in Santa Rosa. We've already gone through, before this was even approved, and kind of picked out the ones that we thought would be pretty easy to implement. We do not have extra funding to do it, so we are looking at doing it through either sign replacements or just seeing if we could kind of, you know, help prioritize what signs we want to replace earlier than later, so that we could modify the speed limits at some of those locations. But I believe they still all do have to go through city council to get approved, because the underlying part of it is all speed limit changes still need to have the city council approval. So it is going to be anytime we take anything to city council, it's expensive, just because it's a long process. It involves a lot of things, a lot of people, these city attorneys, everyone gets involved in these items that go to council. So it's not budgeted for separately. It'll be part of our standard operating costs. But we are planning on looking at locations that we can implement lower speed limits. The other side to that, though, is even if we implement lower speed limits, that doesn't mean people are going to drive slower. So it really takes people to be abiding by what the speed limit is, and having the enforcement there to help support that. And it's kind of a culture change, and it's going to take a while to get people to really change their habits. So just changing the speed limit and the sign itself doesn't necessarily change the behavior.
Yeah, I'm especially concerned about electric vehicles that tend to be heavier. So if the move towards electrification sets through, but we still drive these cars, this is going to be a bigger problem. Thank you.
Hopefully a quick question, and that is budget-wise. In the city of Santa Rosa, your roads and streets gets about 9 million, and I'm not talking about Measure M money, but from your general fund and so forth. You guys are budgeted about 9 million a year, roughly.
So we don't get any general fund for payment. So that's, I'll say that. So it's gas tax, SB1,
okay,
and
yeah,
and CFF and UI are a lot of acronyms. So our capital facilities fees, our utility impact fees, Senate Bill 1. But actually this year Senate Bill 1 is going to go to HERN and to the BPOC, the like pit open crossing. I didn't realize how many acronyms I spew out, right?
That was about 10 in one.
I know. So so it's mainly gas tax that goes towards that. And after this year in gas tax, we actually did get more funding, and in our capital facilities fee, we did get more funding than we're planning because there's been more development. So we are putting some more money towards our paving projects. However, it's not enough. So I mean, I could do a whole other presentation on our paving if you wanted. But basically we need about $18.5 million to stay at the PC, at the pavement condition index that we're in at currently, which is right around 60. If we spent $18.5 million every year from now on, we'd stay at 60 at that average. So we're spending about 9 to 11.
Yeah, Lori just did a presentation in front of BPU a week or two ago, and that's where I was getting the dollars from. But and the need or the shortfall for utilities, Lana Road treatment plant, roads, and so forth, it's a whopping $66 million. The delta from what we can get to what we need, according to
$66 million annually.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a big number. Yeah. So I guess my question is, from the city's perspective, I know you have to be careful how you do this. Are there discussions to at least put some sort of a trigger in there that triggers some allocation from the general fund to roads, streets?
I will just say that our general fund has a lot of demands on it. It has demands from not only just from staff, but also from our facilities themselves. So I'm also in charge of our facilities group, and that's where I see one of the biggest needs for the city is basically just our building maintenance. Yeah. It's huge. The needs that we have. We have leaky buildings, we have leaky roofs, we have AC that doesn't work, we have heaters that don't work. I mean, we wear a jacket in our building all day because it blows cold air on us, not warm air. So there's a lot of needs just for the standard operating stuff that we're not meeting. So for us to I wouldn't expect that we'd get general fund towards asphalt without getting general fund towards some of our other basic needs.
Do you see a solution, or do you see us kind of go on the route of the recent news in Montgomery High School, where you see the infrastructure just freaking crumbling around the students? Are we going to see the city of Santa Rosa's 38 buildings, or however many you guys have to maintain, kind of getting worse and worse and worse? Or
I don't
think some infrastructure money,
but I don't think we'll see things crumble away. We are maintaining to their minimums, but there's more need than there is.
Okay. I didn't mean to open a Pandora's box, but
and it's gas tax. I remember.
Well, that's the other.
I remember the city considered sales tax, for pavement. Like what did happen to that issue? That was like 10 years.
Similar to what Petaluma did, kind of in
a city only,
Yeah, city only. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I remember there was
you need a seminar on the financing of cities in the 21st century in California.
For another meeting with that.
Put some other books for that, I think.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah.
And thank everybody for great questions. Appreciate it. All right. Shauna, you're up again. Measure M program.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you may recall last month we came to you with a request for, well, I think it was in February actually, we came to you and asked for an adjustment to the Measure M expenditure plan. So the Measure M expenditure plan is what was passed by the voters, and then we are allowed to amend it up to once a year. So we had done that. We adjusted the LSP program to remove a number of excess funds from the projects that weren't moving forward and put them all into a reserve for first come, first serve within that program. That being done, we now have to update our strategic plan to add some of the funds that were included in there into the 2 projects that got some additional funds. Those projects, well, there's 3 projects in total, but 2 projects in the local streets programs, the local streets projects program, which are the Hearn Avenue interchange and the 116-121 intersection improvements. Those will both be getting an additional $2 million in programming. And then we will be taking, or we are asking for action on the Old Redwood Highway, Mendocino Avenue, Santa Rosa Avenue corridor bike lanes project to program that $343,000 that Rob mentioned in his presentation. So the strategic implementation plan is our programming document, and we do a call for projects or a call for programming, and we did that and finalized that document in 2022. And so we are asking for out of cycle programming to bring this up to, bring the document up to speed with where we are with what happened last month. So we're asking for programming adjustments. Yes, Mr. Lane.
I'm rather naive, I guess, but what do you mean by programming in this context?
It allows us to access the funding. It puts us on the hook for it and puts it into the budget so that we are committed to providing that funding as opposed to it being an estimate. So in Measure M, each of the projects had an estimate of how much money would be available to that project over the life of the measure, but it's not really there until we program it and say we're on the hook. The project sponsor is moving forward. There is indication that there is progress, and so we are on the hook for providing that funding. And so we earmark the money that is the revenue that's coming in for those projects to be able to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Denny, I always look to you on these technical budgeting issues. Do you have a question on?
No,
on this?
We've done this before over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. This is the first one.
Okay. Are you just looking for action? A motion and second and vote on this?
That's correct. We are asking for a recommendation from the CAC to the board to approve this program.
Okay.
I'll make that recommendation.
Second. Any further discussion on that?
Who seconded? I'm quite here.
Oh,
Moses. Thank you.
No discussion. All those in favor? Oppose? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
And we are on to financial statements. James. Numbers, and more numbers.
The financial statements are in the packet. There's no extra information, on forecasting this month. We do expect some updated forecasting from HDL that we'll provide to you next month. With regard to the status of the forecasting, revenue from the sales tax Measure M. I do want to just point out the different varieties of reports that are within your packet, so you're all familiar with you, especially some of the new folks. So the first 2 spreadsheets you see within the financials are the cash flow based on an Excel spreadsheet in tabular format that's fairly easy to follow with regard to the account codes that are on the far left, broken down into each program bucket within Measure M. One variety is fiscal year to date, so just what we spent from July through February of this year. The next one is from inception to completion through February, so from 2004 for the entire sales tax measure. And then the more detailed breakdown sheets within your packet are the actual balance sheets or trial balances from the accounting system itself. With that, I do want to touch just briefly on a question we got last month from Steve about inflation and sales tax revenue not matching inflation, right? So it essentially, HDL got back to us on it. It essentially has to do with the fact that although inflation is going up and things are costing more, folks are not spending as much, they're not buying as much. And HDL even quoted a recent survey. It was a consumer survey which quoted that 96% of people surveyed are actually planning on behaviors to save additional money. So to just increase their savings is the current trend in the economy now, as opposed to buying things that would increase the sales tax revenue. With that, happy to go into any detail or any questions folks would have about the financials, and includes my report.
So easy question.
Yeah.
What's the TLA HDL mean?
HDL is the
It's what?
Yeah.
What is it?
Right. So
what is HDL?
HDL. Yeah. Well, I didn't know what TLA was.
It's a three-letter acronym. It's the three-letter acronym.
It's not on our list.
Okay.
And HDL is not on our list.
Exactly. HDL is the name of the firm.
Thank you. They really call HDL.
Good old HDL.
There's good questions and there's the great questions. Excellent.
So is there not a formal projection from the survey you mentioned? Is there a possibility, like the revenue instead going up by inflation, like going down? Spending wise,
that's not the current. Yeah, the last we don't have the latest projections. We'll have them for you at the next meeting. But essentially, what was being projected is fairly flat, and then a return to trend is what was projected in our last budget cycle for the current fiscal year we're in. But what's happening right now is we're still going up about 3.5 to 4%. For this current fiscal year we're in, and then the projections are then to flatten out and then return to that trend, right? So the trend historically, since inception of Measure M, going back, 17, 18 years now, has been 3% growth, and that's what was projected, and that's really what's happened. We're within about 98% of what the revenue was projected back
within the projection.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Beautiful.
So that's happy news.
Very.
So James, I have a different question about budgeting and money, and that has to do with where are our funds, and how are we dealing with the regional banking concerns that are quite powerful these days.
So our funds are deposited within the county pool. So it's something that we essentially sub out to the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector's office. And they manage it within both banks and investments. And as far as any follow-up since the last crisis that's gone through, I have not had individual follow-ups with them. They have included recently, though, it was noteworthy that they've included additional controls based on increased cyber fraud during COVID. There was with the conversion to things being all electronic, there was at least one invoice that was paid in representing the city of Sebastopol, who also uses the auditor's controller's office. That was some mistaken funds. So they have that example would really just say they have a talented team down in there that we're entrusting. If there's any specific details that this committee or that you would like, I'd be happy to follow up.
Jeff Cyphers at Swimming Clean Power was asked the same question and said that under California law, public entities are required there has to be like over 100% collateral for funds deposited. And I kind of assume that that's the same requirement on us and our fund, but I wanted to just follow up and make sure that that's the case. And then there's no more questions or conversation about that.
I want to understand explain it to me, please. The collateral, 100% public funds.
What Jeff said at Swimming Clean Power is that public entities are required, the banks are required to hold over 100% of collateral for public funds deposited in them. So unlike a private company that takes their money to Silicon Valley Bank, puts it in, and then they loan it back out, the bank is required to have collateral to be able to back up those public funds that are invested. It's a special requirement of banks that serve public entities. Now, I don't know how closely that's monitored and enforced, but that is apparently the law.
Does it mean that if what happened to the Silicon Valley Bank, you know, like a bank goes into bankruptcy, the public funds are protected, or the same rules apply?
What Jeff explained, and I don't know if this will be secondhand for me, right? Because I'm not a banker. But what Jeff explained is that if there were to be a run on the banks in which Silicon Valley funds are Sonoma Clean Power funds are deposited, the banker would be on the phone saying, please take your money out. We're going to let you take your money out because that means we'll be able to lower our collateral and make those funds available to the other depositors. That's what Jeff explained. Again, I don't know how accurate.
Tom, the one question I would have on the Silicon Valley Bank, the problem wasn't that they didn't have collateral, they didn't have liquidity on the collateral. And so when you're talking about collateral, you didn't have to also be liquid.
Yeah, they had to get their collateral liquidity, and they had to sell their bonds, their longer term bonds, for a big loss to get that. I don't know that what Jeff is telling you protects us anymore, because what do you call collateral? It goes right to the heart. Long-term debt, and maybe there's a banker more knowledgeable.
Well, this raises the question in my mind is, well, why would any bank want to do business with public entities? I mean, the way a bank works is that they take money from some people and pay an interest, and then they loan it out value and charge interest. And if they can't loan it out, they can't make any money. So why would they? How are they even in business?
And why would they serve the public sector?
Yeah,
that's part of their business model. So that's an interesting question. I appreciate the feedback. I'll report.
Did anyone ever look at the audited financial statements you guys get? So it has it all in there.
The audited financial statements for this, so it shows what.
Yeah, your investments are in there. Yeah. So go to your footnotes and you'll be able to put that up. Yeah, that's
perfect.
So if I may suggest, can you forward to the group here the latest audit, you know, so as you know, to refresh our information.
Yeah, we get those because we get to approve those. You know?
No, I understand the last approved one. We share it with the group.
Yep.
For education.
Sure. Good questions, good answers. Thank you.
2021. The last number?
I think a year ago.
You have 22 already?
Yeah. This committee received a presentation in October of 22, and then the board approved it in December of 22. But Drew can send out to the committee the audited financial statements for Measure M as well as SCTA to be able to reference the footnotes that.
Excellent, thank you. Good report, James. Thank you. Any other questions? Tom has one more.
And more of an engineering question. What the heck's going on down on the 101 at Roller?
Yeah.
Ooh, go by that today.
I think David wants to take this one.
Yeah. That's a big chunk that broke off, man.
Nice handoff, James.
Yeah, good job, James.
Quickly, if I may share why we also have them on our website as well. I will send you all the links to these financials, but if you go on scta.ca.gov and under library, under reports, you'll see the audited financials. But I will send all the links, but just in case anyone wants some nighttime reading.
Thank you, and that's got all the footnotes in there. For your reading pleasure at the next, for the next storm. Yeah.
Coming up.
Go ahead, David.
All right, so this is about the slide at 101. So yeah, we were notified last week that there was some landslide activity going on at Redwood Drive by the state park along the southbound lanes of 101. That section was newly completed, I think less than 10 years ago, and there was 2 main PG&E gas lines and a water aqueduct through there. Due to the increasing slide, one of the pipes from PG&E was exposed. And so the decision was made to shut down the lanes of 101 temporarily over the weekend so that PG&E could build a temporary connection to have a bypass essentially of their line that would go underneath the southbound lanes of 101 into the median currently, which is closed for construction for the widening in Marin County, and then go back a little bit to the south to get back up to the main line as a bypass. So that's a temporary bypass that's in place for probably at least the next month, maybe perhaps longer. We're in potentially up to 6 months, but we aren't working directly on that project. That's led by the Transportation Authority of Marin and Caltrans. So we're staying in the loop, but we'll be sure to bring you back any updates. And the closure was originally scheduled to go from 9 a.m. on Saturday, or excuse me, 9 p.m. Saturday to 9 a.m. on Sunday. It got extended to around 2 p.m. And it sounds like there was a lot of traffic disruption on Lakeville Highway, and we're hopeful that we won't have to do that kind of detour again for a while.
I was down there today and saw that. That is a massive bunch of soil down there. So you know what they're planning on doing are they gonna?
We're not aware of what Caltrans plans are. It's really a PG&E and Marin County issue that's kind of moving into a Caltrans issue as well. So who's going to pay for what and how they fix it is still to be determined.
I saw reports about the gas lines being realigned. What about the aqueduct? Was there any need to do anything with the Sonoma Marin aqueduct?
It's my understanding that the aqueduct is still in decent shape, but we'll keep you informed if there's any changes on that. But as far as I know, the only work that was done over the weekend was on the PG&E gas line.
That's from Sonoma Water down to the North Marin Water District, major aqueduct.
Thank you. Are we there?
I've got one announcement.
Okay. Finish early.
Very briefly, hate to hand out so much paper today, but our executive director is in Washington, D.C. with MTC currently. And this is a document we put together, kind of a leave behind piece for meetings. I just think it summarizes well, especially on the back, our requests for both SCTA and RCPA. So feel free to peruse, let us know if you have any questions. But this is just to kind of accompany her meetings, and
this is what they're handing out.
Yeah, exactly. So just wanted to make you aware of that, and I have a couple more if you don't have one. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really nicely done.
And Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
There's a new executive director who is part of that meeting in Washington, D.C., Andy Premier, has been appointed as the new executive director of MTC following the resignation due to ill health of Therese McMillan.
Okay, thank you.
And Andy is a longtime member of the senior management as a deputy executive director, was involved in a major way on the East Bay span of the Bay Bridge and involved in a major way on Highway 37.
You know, you talk about MTC, it reminds me of Tom's question here. We're going to ask where they're keeping the money stashed. That's the organization. I want to make sure they got it diversified out there. There's a couple zeros after what they're holding. Go ahead, Steve. Thank you for that, Jake.
So is Tulare Creek Bridge, are they looking at the current elevation, or are they going to the ultimate elevation on it?
So we had some back and forth with Congressman Huffman on our request on that. Originally, we were looking at just the existing elevation and the wider bridge and longer span to accommodate sea level rise and tidal flow through Tulare Creek. We've committed through the permitting process to work with our permitting partners and other interested agencies to look at the elevation of the Tulare Creek Bridge, but really raising it up that more than a few inches would affect the smart line, and then you'd have to raise the elevation of the entire smart line, which would add tens of millions of dollars on top of that. So going with an ultimate bridge is something that we're looking at a feasibility stage, but doing that within the same timeline of the Sears Point to Maryland Improvement Project is probably not likely, just given that and the ultimate project, the ultimate bridge with a railroad grade separation at Tully Creek Bridge would require doing a full interchange at Highway 121, which is a $500 million project and probably 10 or 20 years of project development before you can start construction.
One of the things that you may want to get connected with, I was on a task force with MTC on sea level rise and the funding, and the report hasn't come out yet because it's quite a surprise. And the plans are protected to 4.9 feet by 2050. And so it's not clear that everything will be protected because of how expensive it will be. And that whole area, the southern part of our county, could be in jeopardy, especially looking at what the plans look like for Highway 37 as well, because it could have been a dike, but it's not going to be a dike. So,
and I think Dodd and Ezra brokered a fairly important, I want to call it an MOU amongst 4 or 5 major stakeholders. And Mosa has a question, but can you just address, do you know anything about that? That I think that's kind of important to the whole process moving forward on 37. And
correct. There was a memorandum of understanding entered into our partnership agreement between the California State Transportation Agency, Caltrans, MTC, the California Natural Resources Agency, and some of their subsidiary departments at Resources Agency to look at both the interim projects on Highway 37 and the long-term projects on Highway 37, and how to accommodate them through the permitting process and environmental mitigation, and working at kind of the short-term improvements that need to happen now to deal with sea level rise, such as replacing the Tully Creek Bridge, which is what we requested money for. So that agreement is available on our website.
Thank you. Most had a question, and then Joe.
So my understanding, there's a DC delegation now. Are they asking for funding, for these, projects from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or, something else?
A little bit of everything. So for the transportation projects you see at the top, we sent specific requests to members of Congress and the Senator Feinstein for specific projects, including the Tully Creek Bridge. City of Cotati also submitted a project as well, and then the town of Windsor did specifically, and that's just for the appropriations process that Congress does every year. So last year we got 1.5 million through that process for the 121 8th Street East Signal project or roundabout. I haven't quite decided yet, and we're hopeful that we'll get some money this year for other transportation projects. But
so how much are we asking?
We asked for $7 million for the Tully Creek Bridge, and then I'm not sure how much the town of Windsor asked for. I believe is about $700,000 for the design of their project, and then City of Cotati asked for, I think, for $4 million for their project.
So I see here $3.1 billion, for the what they call it, the energy efficiency and conservation block. Is it just for us here, the county, or?
I'm not familiar with that portion of the handout, unfortunately. So I'd have to defer to Suzanne, who's in DC, on that content.
Because there are numbers in the billions, are we?
For the entire program.
Is it the entire, not, what we're asking for?
It's for the entire program. It's not for.
Is it the entire program at the national level or at the county level?
At the national level.
Which one?
At the national level.
Jake, had a comment?
Just that for as long as I can ever remember, at this time of year, MTC has gone back to Washington, D.C. With the leadership of the organization. And we're actually in the North Bay counties in a good position because Alfredo Pedrosa from Napa County has been reappointed for another 2-year term. And it doesn't hurt to be the chair of MTC from the North counties. So that's a good sign. But this annual trip back to Washington, D.C. is well recognized back there. There's a major reception back there for legislators and legislative staff. And so the fact that Suzanne is back there also with the leadership of MTC, I mean, this is the key lobbying meeting.
Kind of where Suzanne does her magic, right?
Well, and where Alfredo will be doing his magic, and where Andy Premier and all of us, I did it for about 10 years.
Yeah.
It's an interesting experience.
I bet it is. I bet it is. All right, thank you.
Another question, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
since we're at that time, I think.
Yep, so I think we're close.
Regional Measure 3 monies, is there a report on the release of Regional Measure 3 monies?
So we're still coordinating with MDC on potential cash flow availability for projects this fiscal year. And they're trying to determine their bonding capacity and whether they're going to need to have more money available short term for projects. We submitted a number of submittals on different projects to MDC on Friday and hope to come back to you with an update in the future.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mr. Chair, it'd be good to have a report now that this log jam has finally been broken.
Yeah, good idea.
Oh, happy day.
Just real quickly, April, I will not be here. Mosa has graciously agreed to chair the meeting in April. We won't have a meeting in May because it falls on the holiday. So I will see you all in a couple of months. Thank you guys for coming. Great questions. Great speakers.
What's the date in April?
Pardon?
April 24th.
I'll probably be a member of the public.
I'm not sure if
I'll be like Jeff, like